Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. In today's video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for June 26th through June 30th, 2026, and I'm working with the June Stories by the Month collection from Ali Edwards. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, this is the final week in June, which is not an entire week because I always want to end part one of my 2020 or of my Project Life. So for each year, I have two albums. So for 2026, I have one that goes January through June and one that goes July through December. And I've been doing it this way since 2015, I want to say, where I've had two albums per year. So I'm pretty set in my ways with this. But I always want my album to end on June 30th. So I did a shorter week for this. It's going to just be these 3 days, this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, plus the Monday, Tuesday from the following week, which I haven't yet done in my taken notes. So I just have some notes here. So not a ton to document because it's only 5 days, but a few things happened. And I'm using the June Stories by the Month kit. So I'm also going to do my June ephemera page. So I'm going to put that to the side and work on this first. So I have my ephemera and such in here. So I'm going to pull that out of the way. And then I've been using this blue tray that I picked up on Amazon for my embellishments in the Stories by the Month kits. And I feel like it's just a perfect size to kind of capture everything where I can still see it, but keep it contained on my desk. And then I have the 3x4 cards, the 4x6 cards, and this fun sticker sheet this month. So let me put the cards to the side. Oh, first though, let me find in here this card. So this year there's been this repeated card in each kit, and I've been using that for my title part. So I'm going to use that here. You see, and then let's see what photos we have in my stories from this week. So have this photo of me and Pumpkin. I don't look the best, but he is so freaking cute, so I have to use that photo. We've got a rainstorm. The roses were blooming. I brought some of them inside. I've been making a lot of fresh meals. And I do that generally, but in the summer, I feel like it's more so. So I printed two small, and I'm thinking I'm going to make some sort of card here with those on the 4x6. And then we've been sitting outside with Pumpkin. And then we had a bit of a plumbing emergency, which was not fun. So that's what these two photos are about. And there's this one. Okay, so now let me go through the cards. And I was thinking this one for that. So before I printed these, I did look through these cards to see what sizes I would want. And this card has been coming every kit this year, but I'm putting it to the side. I'm not using those. There's these repeated cards, and I definitely could have done something like this. And I feel like that would work, but I'm leaning towards this pattern. And then these ones are repeated, so I'm probably going to save those together. And then the other one I really liked, let me put this with there, was this June Joys. And I had originally thought I would crop these two squares to go underneath it, but the way I took the photos, I took them originally to share in my Instagram stories, so they're very vertical. And so cropping them as squares, I felt like you couldn't see the full meal very well. So I think I'm going to go with that one. Okay, so now we've got 3x4 photos. And let me see. So my main stories are, unfortunately, this plumbing incident. And let me look through here. And let's see, I had a lot of kind of catching up with crafting to do after coming back from vacation. This was my first pass day after vacation. So I have a full-time job, but I work 9 out of 10 days. So every other Friday I have off, which is called my pass day. And I tend to use that for a lot of my filming of content. So I didn't have one until after vacation. So I really had fallen behind because one of my past days I was on vacation. So I'm spending a lot of time this weekend doing that. And I also was doing a lot of yard work because, again, getting my yard back to nice condition after being gone for a couple of weeks, and, you know, just doing my regular pruning and such. And then the plumbing set issues. And then let me just look in here. That's pretty much it. And then just like work. So really not a lot. I feel like I could use this card to tell like the 3 just like getting back into routine stories. And then I definitely need one for the plumbing emergency. Again, there's these repeated. These repeated ones are in every single kit this year, and I'm putting these in my stories album, so I'm gonna put those to the side. And let's see, we've got this around here. There's these currently cards. Now these would be good for telling stories, but then I probably don't need that one. Although I feel like I could tell a story related to these. So currently, currently fresh meals, and then currently plumbing emergency, and then currently need to come up with something else I'd want to tell a story about. And then I have this one, and then this one. I was also like, I had seen that there was this in here, so I'm thinking I could put this on here to kind of add a title to these. And then let's see what else we have. We have these larger die cuts that I feel like take up too much space for most of these photos, although I could do something like this. And then we've got these. There might be too many to include on everything, or to include all of them. So often when I do things like this, I want to try to use all of something. Let's see where the other chipboard are. Things I'm celebrating. I kind of want to put some sort of embellishment right here. So I'm thinking maybe like that. Going with the flow. June. So maybe I'll use the chipboard instead of these die cuts. And we have this always thankful. And then currently. There we go. I like that. Okay, so then I just need some to figure out kind of what I want to put on these, and I'm thinking maybe some alpha stickers, and then maybe I'll do something similar on there. But let's see, we also have these, and some of these say 2026, so I'm probably going to want to put those somewhere, or then maybe there's these June moments ones also, and these florals. So I'm going to think about how I want to include a few of these things, and I'm gonna just put you guys on voiceover and get this one put together, and then after I finish this part of the spread, I will work on that ephemera pocket insert. Okay, so the first thing I want to do are these 3 currently cards. I love the setup of these cards with these colorful circles for journaling, and I thought it'd be super fun to put some larger words in them as a title and then journal underneath it. I started writing out on my sticky note kind of what I wanted those titles to be, and I struggled to make it short enough. And so what I end up doing is a title that goes across the top of the circle and the bottom. You'll see pretty soon. I went through some of my alpha stickers from Ali Edwards. I wanted kind of like the grayish color because I thought it would go really well with the colors of this kit and kind of pop against the background colors. I didn't want to use white though, because the background is not quite white, so I thought it would be too bright, and then I didn't want to use black because black seemed a little too harsh for this spread. So I found this set that I have a couple of sheets of so that I would be able to write everything I wanted to write, and I did end up running out of S's, which was fine. I just had to be cognizant of that when I was figuring out what words I wanted to include. So for this first one, I did fresh meals. So I'm putting fresh across the top and the meals across the bottom. And then I'm going to journal in kind of the circular shape in the middle about making fresh meals. And that goes with those photos that are on that 4x6 card beneath it, which I will adhere down in a little bit later in the video. At this point, I'm just going to focus on the journaling first because I really want to prioritize these 3 cards as kind of the decorative element of the spread that kind of ties everything together. And when I have an idea like that, I usually want to do that part first just because I already know in my head what I want it to look like. And then I can build the rest of the spread around those. So next, I'm going to move on to the yellow one, which I end up adjusting where these are. And I decided to use this one to tell the story of the weather. So it was super hot this week. We had a huge heat wave, and we've had a heat wave now for a few weeks. It's probably just climate change because it's been so much hotter than it usually is here. And we also have had a lot of summer storms that kind of break the humidity, but only for a little bit. So I decided to have my title here be hot and stormy, and I'm putting it next to that photo of the rainstorm out from our front porch on the left. And then on the right hand side next to it, there is a photo of pumpkins sitting out on the porch, which is what we've been doing when it's a little bit cooler and we're in the shade, just to kind of get some outside time and enjoy it because the summer's been too hot to kind of go for walks or play pickleball or any of the other outdoor activities, but we have been able to sit on the porch in the shade, usually with popsicles or cold drinks, and Pumpkin absolutely loves it too. So that is what this photo is here. I went over to my stash and grabbed some white word phrase strips, some sheets that are almost done because my goal is to use these up. You guys, it is so satisfying to use up a sheet of stickers. I unfortunately did not use up any sheets during this video, but I'm hopeful that I'm close with these ones. And at some point I will probably toss them, even if they're not entirely used up, if the words that are left are so specific that it's going to be hard for me to find a place to use them. It's better for me to just not store it in my stash anymore. Some of these sheets are very old. I think one of them has the year on it. It says 2016 or something like that. So clearly these have been in my stash for a very long time. I don't need to hold on to them forever. Moving on to this card here. So this one I wanted to tell the story of the water issues we had. So my house is fairly new. I guess it's starting to be not considered a new house anymore. I built it in 2020, so it is now 2026. So it is getting to be about 6 years old. And we had a few minor plumbing issues that hit on the same day, but were unrelated. Our shower needed a new cartridge, which is a typical maintenance repair situation. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but then we had a leak in our ceiling, which turns out there was an issue when they installed the drainage in my shower that we didn't notice until now, of course, 2 months after the warranty expired. But you know, what do you do? There's a reason why they set the warranty at that length of time. I journaled about that situation on that orange circle with the title Ugh Water. And then I decided that I needed a little bit more space. So I added one of these square die cuts onto this photo of the hole in the ceiling. Pumpkin ran across because his feeder went off, so his lunch was being served. And you'll see he comes back after he finishes eating. But anyways, so I just decided to add this onto this photo. I also wanted to add it because this is kind of an ugly photo. So sometimes the photos are more decorative and look better. Some of the ones like on the left-hand side, I have some of my meals. I have some flowers. I have the flowers on the table. Those are more decorative photos that look nice. This photo more just tells a story. So this is not an attractive looking photo, but it tells a story. So I want it to be a part of my spread. But because it's not a pretty photo, I want to kind of hide it in a way. So what I'm doing is adding a lot of embellishments on top of it. And that's something I do pretty regularly. If a photo is gorgeous on its own, I often will let it just stand alone or put a small embellishment on it. Whereas if it's something like this, where it's just not a pretty photo, I'm going to cover it up and make sure that it shows the story that I'm trying to tell, but it's not detracting from the overall spread. I wanted to add a word phrase strip because there was like a little gap at the bottom there and none of the white ones worked and I felt like white wasn't right. So I went and pulled a black one from my stash. And I also added one of those flowers from the kit. The sticker sheet in the kit had these florals that were kind of a funky style and I wanted to use some of them on the spread and I ended up doing that. I put the 2026 tag on the photo of the living room getting the repair work done just because I want to use up those tags because 2026 is not going to be here forever. And then if I don't use them this year, then I will never use them and they will sit in my stash forever. So anytime there's something dated, I prioritize using it. And I think I end up using the second one as well. There's two that say 2026. Oh, I end up putting it on my ephemera pocket. So stay tuned. That'll be later in the video. This filler card here, I don't love that it's sitting next to the plumbing issue, but it is also next to a photo of the flowers blooming in my yard. So it is what it is. I also didn't want the love, love, love next to the plumbing emergency, but I didn't have a like negative filler card. So it ended up working out. I feel like the spread makes sense. I added one of the flower stickers onto that filler card though, just to personalize it a little bit and use more of those floral stickers. I end up using a few of them also on my insert, which you'll see soon. And then I just added the dates onto my title card and I used the asterisk from that same font that I had used for my titles to kind of add a little dot between the two dates. That is just another example of how I like to work from a recipe of supplies. So once I pull something from my stash and bring it to my table to work on my project, that becomes part of my recipe. So obviously my initial recipe here is the kit that I'm working from, but I have pulled over some of these word phrase strip sticker pads. There's Pumpkin coming back after lunch. I also pulled over those alphas. So those are now part of my recipe that I am pulling from when putting together my spread. I'm adding some of the chipboard pieces from the kit onto some of the different photos and layering some of the word phrase strips on it. So this rose photo here is going to have that same treatment that some of the photos on the right hand side have. And I'm using some of the chipboard pieces from this kit. I don't end up using everything in this kit. I feel like these kits are too big for just one spread, but I want to put a significant dent in them so that I'm not putting too much back in my stash. This year, I'm only using the Stories by the Month kits to put together one Project Life spread before I put them in my stash. There are a few other cards from the kit that I am using in my my stories album for the year, but most of it is going into my stash, and that's okay. I will end up pulling it back out, and I might use it to tell some stories from the month at some point. But for now, I don't really have the time or energy to tell more than one story or many more stories each month. So I'm just letting it go and putting the rest of the kit in my stash. I changed my adhesive there, so you can see I have two adhesive rollers on my desk. These are the Mono permanent adhesive tape rollers. I love these. I've used them for so long and I just put the refills in whenever both of them run out. So that's what I did. I also pulled over, this is my Tombow Fudenosuke hard tip pen. And that is something I use in journaling a lot, but I have used it in my scrapbook occasionally. And I decided to use it to add some larger words. So on that chipboard piece, I added the word delicious new meals. And I'm also going to use that same pen to add some titles onto the 1, 2, 3 card. And it works really well in scrapbooks. So if you're looking for a nice black marker to add some larger titles, I highly recommend this pen. I will link in the description box below, but it is the most like bold black, like the blackest black, which I know is hard sometimes to find in markers. On this 1, 2, 3 card, I decided to tell the story of the 3 things this week that were kind of like catch-up stuff after vacation. So I was working on content prep, so working on a lot of content filming and editing and projects so that I have content to share with you guys here and over on Instagram. I was working on some yard work, so my yard grew up a ton while I was gone. I needed to trim the rose bushes and prune everything and weed and all sorts of stuff. And then also work. It's always hard to come back to work after being out of the office, and I got a new employee this time while I was out, which was just bad timing because I had this vacation planned for months and months, and I didn't realize, that I was going to get a new employee at that point in time. So I also had to work on training and everything that comes along with that. I'm just going to go ahead and slide everything into the pockets here and call that done. And now I'm going to move on to my ephemera insert. This month I didn't collect that much ephemera. And part of that was because I was on vacation for half of the month. And so all of the ephemera that I collected on vacation is in a separate place because that is potentially going to go into my travel album when I eventually put one together. And a lot of it went into my daily journal while I was traveling. So I don't necessarily have that much here to put in here because a lot of that stuff has been saved. So what I did was I just saved a couple of things. So I'm just kind of putting them on the front here. And I will end up finding some additional stuff to add. So let's see here. I have a couple of tags from some products or new things that I picked up. I have the Stories by the Month packaging, which I use pretty much every time that I don't have a ton of stuff. And then I have this kind of label from our Parks Pass cover. And so I added the 2026 on there, and you can see I used a couple of things from it. And then I have this insert that came with a new coffee table book that we got for a shelf in our living room that is all about cats. And it was just kind of like an example of some of the pages. It was like a flyer for the book, and it just came with the book. So what I did was I just cut it up, and I'm using it to fill the entire back of this. I wouldn't have done that if I had a lot of ephemera. I probably would have just taken one or two pieces from it. But this way I have enough stuff to fill this entire back here, and I get to keep some of this ephemera. Then I go back to the front side. So you can just see I'm just cropping this into 2x2 squares, slipping them in, and I'll flip it back over and go to the front. So I do have some gaps here. So what I did was I went into my travel ephemera pouches and I found things that I had more than one of them. So I want to prioritize putting ephemera in my travel album, but if I do have anything extra, I can use it here. So I had a couple of business cards that I picked up more than one. And then I had quite a few boarding passes because there were two of us and we flew multiple places. We took four flights, because 2 flights there, 2 flights back with our layover. So I had quite a few boarding passes, so I was able to use one of them in here, and I just cropped a few pieces out from it. And then I had one spot left, and I'm just rearranging everything to get it so I like the color patterns in there. And then I'm just creating a filler card for that last 2x2 pocket. And how I'm going to do that is crop down some vellum, and then I'm using some of these stickers from the kit to create a pattern with the little floral stickers. And I love how this came out. I honestly wish I had used all of them on like a 3x4 card like this, because I think it's just so cute how they look layered. I did struggle to get that little edge to lay right, but there you go. That is a look at how that came together. Here's a look at that completed spread. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye.